Welcome back. We are about to begin the fourth session, the second of the day. And I would like to request the dignitaries to please come on dais. May I request Honorable Shri Justice Pankaj Mittal, Chief Justice, High Court of Jammu and Kashmir, Honorable Mrs. Justice B.V. Nagaratna, Judge, High Court of Karnataka and President, Karnataka Judicial Academy, Honorable Shri Justice Harish Chandra Mishra, Judge, High Court of Jharkhand and Judge in Charge, Judicial Academy, Jharkhand, Honorable Shri Justice Sandeep Mehta, Judge, Rajasthan High Court and Chairman, Rajasthan State Judicial Academy, Honorable Srimati Justice Nandita Dubey, Judge, High Court of Madhya Pradesh, Ms. Ananya Bandyopadhyay, Director, West Bengal Judicial Academy, and Professor Dr. Balraj Chauhan, Vice Chancellor, Dharmashastra, National Law University. Please take your respective seats. Ms. Ananya Bandyopadhyay, Director, West Bengal Judicial Academy, and Professor Dr. Balraj Chauhan, Vice Chancellor, Dharmashastra, National Law University. You are cordially invited on the dais. Ms. Ananya Bandyopadhyay should join us shortly. We would also like to welcome Ms. Ananya Bandyopadhyay, Director, West Bengal Judicial Academy, on dais. So we are here for a very important topic: gender sensitization, justness, and social media, nascent challenges of judicial education. The various components of this particular topic was also emphasized by dignitaries who were present at the inaugural session yesterday at Manas Bhavan. So without wasting much time, let me tell you that this session will be chaired by Honorable Shri Justice Pankaj Mittal, Chief Justice, High Court of Jammu and Kashmir, jointly co-chaired by Honorable Mrs. Justice B.V. Nagaratna, Judge, High Court of Karnataka and President, Karnataka Judicial Academy, and Honorable Shri Justice Harish Chandra Mishra, Judge, High Court of Jharkhand and Judge in Charge, Judicial Academy, Jharkhand. We would like to welcome our dignitaries on dais with the book and rosebud. May I request Sri Ram Kumar Chaubey, Director, Madhya Pradesh State Judicial Academy, to welcome Honorable Shri Justice Pankaj Mittal, Chief Justice, High Court of Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you very much and welcome. May I request Srimati Samitha Sharma, Director, Sikkim Judicial Academy, to welcome Honorable Mrs. Justice B.V. Nagaratna, Judge, High Court of Karnataka and President, Karnataka Judicial Academy. May I now request Sri Gauri Shankar Satapathy, Director, Odisha Judicial Academy, to welcome Honorable Shri Justice Harish Chandra Mishra, Judge, High Court of Jharkhand and Judge in Charge, Judicial Academy, Jharkhand. Honorable Shri Justice Harish Chandra Mishra, thank you very much for joining us. May I request Shri Jatendra Kumar, Director, Bihar Judicial Academy, to please welcome Honorable Shri Justice Sandeep Mehta, Judge, Rajasthan High Court and Chairman, Rajasthan State Judicial Academy. Honorable Shri Justice Sandeep Mehta, welcome once again. Srimati Nandini Vyas, Director, Rajasthan State Judicial Academy, will welcome Honorable Srimati Justice Nandita Dubey, Judge, High Court of Madhya Pradesh. Thank you. Ms. Parvati M. Harmath, Director, Karnataka Judicial Academy. Ms. Parvati will welcome Ms. Ananya Bandyopadhyay, Director, West Bengal Judicial Academy. I would like to request Sri Deepak Nath Tiwari, Director, Jharkhand Judicial Academy, to welcome Professor Dr. Balraj Chauhan, Vice Chancellor, Dharmashastra National Law University. Thank you very much and welcome once again. Now I would like to take this opportunity to invite Professor Dr. Balraj Chauhan, Vice Chancellor, Dharmashastra National Law University for introductory speech. Thank you so very much.
Good afternoon to all of you. Namaskar. Distinguished dignitaries sitting on the dais, off the dais, honorable chairpersons, directors, judicial officers, my distinguished fellow colleague, Professor Vijay Kumar, Professor Balram ji, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to thank organizers, particularly Judge in charge of the Judicial Education of Madhya Pradesh, Honorable Shri Justice Prakash Srivastav ji, for providing me this wonderful opportunity. First, to share the dais with the Honorable Shri Justice Pankaj Mittal ji, Honorable Shri Justice Madam B.B. Nagratna ji, Honorable Shri Justice Harishchand Mishra ji, Honorable Shrimati Justice Nandita Dubey ji, Honorable Shri Justice Sandeep Mehta ji, and also with Madam Miss Ananya Bandyopadhyay, Director, West Bengal Judicial Academy. Believe me, yesterday and today has been the days of learning for me, because it was rightly said that everybody is a student, he learns every day. And it was more interesting for me because it was in 1990 when I was called by the then first appointed Honorable Director of the Uttar Pradesh Judicial Academy, Honorable Justice Shri K.N. Goyal. He retired as a High Court judge, and he became the director of the UP Judicial Academy. Honorable Justice Shri Mehboob Ali ji is sitting here, and he might be knowing it, that he started judicial training program. That was a time, because initially we thought about the judicial education in 1957 in 14th report of the Law Commission. But judicial education was programmatized by 117th report of the Law Commission. And after that, judicial academies were established throughout the country, and judicial education was imparted. Before I touch the topic, I would like to deal 2 or 3 topics which have been raised during these discussions. Number one, first question was, what is the difference between the legal education and the judicial education? And I think it is very much important for the chairman and the directors who are running the programs, because when I talk about the legal education, because I, Professor Vijay, Professor Balram ji, we are in the legal education, and Naini Palkhiwala defined education is a technique of transmitting civilization. And in performing these objects, it has to perform 2 functions. Number one, it has to enhance the understanding of the learners, and number 2, it has to enlighten the character of the learners. And in achieving those objectives, when I say enhancing the understanding, it means creating the intellectual integrity, developing intellectual curiosity. And how it can be done? It is done through core knowledge, contextual knowledge, skill development, and value inculcation. Of course, character is very important, and when you talk about the ethical values, other things, and most of the time discussions are on. But what is judicial education? What is special in judicial education? Believe me, in 1992, 1993, when I thought over it, I just added, judicial education is a technique of transmitting judicial culture in such a way so that independence of judiciary is assured. Because one jurist said, life of law is not logic but experience. I usually say, life of law is not logic, it's true, but life of law is justice. And it is for a judge to breathe the life into the law. How they will do it, what is judicial culture, and how we can move forward. So I focused on two terms. The concept of fair trial and the access to justice is deep rooted in the history, enshrined in the Constitution, sanctified by the religious philosophy and the justice doctrine, and embodied in the statutes intended to regulate the course of a trial, especially criminal trial. The image of and the prestige, not only of the judiciary, but of law and constitution. What Honorable Chairperson of the preceding session said, teach at least preamble to the, not only officers, he was talking about all. Law students who are sitting there, if they are not knowing about the preamble, they are not knowing about the part 3rd, part 4, 4A, then how we will be able to talk? So therefore, my dear sirs and madams, I will humbly suggest that judicial education is a continuing education, whether you are sitting in your courtroom, because I differ on this point that the education can be given only in the judicial academy. No. It's a continuing thing, where the moment you are sitting on the dais, Honorable Lordship was mentioning about the militant war. Militant war, how you are dealing with them, how you are trying to find out the solutions, keeping in mind that the role of law should be ensured. That is the beauty, that is the purpose. And because as far as my experience are concerned with judiciary, since then I joined as a Vice Chancellor of the National Law Institute, University Bhopal, 2006. By that time, I was frequently visiting UP Judicial Academy, almost all the programs from there. When I came to Bhopal, then by virtue of the Vice Chancellor, I became the ex officio member of the General Council of the National Judicial Academy. Professor Menon was there. Then Professor Mohan Gopal joined. We interacted there. And afterwards, when I went back to Lucknow as a Vice Chancellor, Ram Manohar Lohia National Law University, I got the opportunity to work with the judges. And again, I came to Jabalpur. This academy is doing wonderful work. I can only say that every time there is a space for improvement. And I know that the senior officers should look for the excellence. But sir, I agree with the chairperson of the last session when he said that I'm happy with the performance. I know about the conditions. Because when in one case recently, a person who was in jail for more than 10 years, after being convicted by the trial court, he was convicted for murder. And he applied for the bail, and his bail was rejected by the Sessions Court, by the trial court, but he applied before the High Court. And High Court didn't post that matter for hearing. And after 10 years, he went before the Supreme Court. Sir, we believe in the principle of the speedy justice, and I have not been heard so far, so it is a violation of my right. Honorable Justice Adarsh Goel gave his judgment, because as far as the bail was concerned, he said it will be listed before the concerned court in time. However, he discussed everything. IS, the name is the Tamarkar versus state, in which he discussed everything, why there is a delay, what are the problems of judiciary. Amicus curiae was appointed, and lot of advisory has been given, especially protection to the poor people, legal aid. We are seeing that the judgments are coming in that direction. So humbly, I would like to submit that education is a need of the day, yes. But the topic which have been given to me is very interesting, and the topic is gender sensitization, justice and social media, nascent challenges of the judicial education. I will take 5 minutes only, sir. You see, I will take the cue from Professor Vijay. He was talking about the andragogy and the pedagogy. Sir, if I will take this topic to my students, I will start with the constitutional rights and other things. But I'm standing before the judicial officers. And here I will say, sir, you know the difference between the sex and gender. You know the difference between the laws which have been framed to protect women as a sex, and you know the laws which have been passed to protect or promote the rights of a human being. Because this is the first requirement when you are talking about this particular topic. Second thing, I was in the United States of America in 1992. For the first time I visited there, and I met with one professor in Baltimore University, Professor Brown. And he asked me, Professor Chauhan, I visited India last year, and I found there are less women on the roads, there are less women in the restaurants, there are almost no women in the clubs and bars. I couldn't understand his question. But I go, what do you mean by it? If they are not there, they are not there. Bole, no, they are not participating in life, social life. I came back, I discussed it with my teachers, with my students, and then I realized that how important, we are talking about the equality, we are talking about the gender equality, we are talking about the gender justice, and you are facing cases, but the important thing is, and I congratulate the organizers, those who have put this topic in this particular discussion, it's a very sensitive issue. Why I'm saying it's sensitive? Because when I try to find out, because first thing, Mr. Chairman, I would like to tell you that my friend, Mr. Chaube, has directed me just 15 minutes before that I have to speak on this topic. So what I am telling you, yes, sir. Last thing, but on my remembrance, because when I tried to find out, then I found even the Supreme Court is not very clear. Because then they are talking about the gender justice, they are taking three types of approaches. Number one, protectionist approach. Number two, sameness approach. And number three, progressive approach. When I say protectionist approach, in Saudagar Singh versus the state of Punjab, in 1954, a matter came before the Punjab High Court. And the matter was, some vacancies were advertised by the Punjab government for the appointment of warder in jails. There was a note that women need not to apply. They are not eligible for the post. One lady went in the High Court. She said that I am having the equal rights with the man. Why there is a discrimination? The court said that no. It will be very unsafe for women to work in a jail. That judgment was passed in 1954, but in 2021, I don't think such type of judgment will come. Because you can prescribe physical conditions, you can prescribe, because today we are seeing that the Bachendri Pal and women are excelling in all fields of life. They are boxers, they are trainers, they are police officers. Another judgment, series of judgments, Nargis Mirza, AIR India case, CB Muthamma, and Vishakha. From Vishakha started the series of the progressive judgments. And recently, Sabriwala, Haji Ali Bandar, Shanishrai, entry in the Shanishrai Mandir. So all those cases, so what I am trying to say that, sirs and madams, the first thing is try to understand the difference between the sex and gender. Try to understand the difference between the laws which has been enacted to protect the women, because our fundamental duty is to renounce the practices derogatory to the dignity of women. First rule. Article 21, rightly mentioned by previous chairperson, that right to life and liberty are paramount rights. No person shall be deprived of the life and liberty without the procedure established by law, no, without the due process of law. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Balraj Chauhan. And now, without taking much of time, I would like to request Ms. Ananya Bandhopadhyay, Director, West Bengal Judicial Academy, to please share your insights on this topic.
Honorable Justice Pankaj Mittal, Chief Justice, High Court of Jammu and Kashmir, Honorable Justice B.V. Nagaratna, Judge, High Court of Karnataka, and President, Karnataka Judicial Academy, Honorable Justice Harish Chandra Mishra, Judge, High Court of Jharkhand, and Judge in Charge, Judicial Academy, Jharkhand, Honorable Justice Nandita Dubey, Judge, High Court of Madhya Pradesh, Honorable Justice Sandeep Mehta, Judge, Rajasthan High Court, and Chairman, Rajasthan State Judicial Academy, Honorable Chief Justices and Honorable Judges of other High Courts of the dais, brother and sister judicial officers, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to all of you. West Bengal Judicial Academy was established on 3rd of December 2005, and its permanent campus was inaugurated on 25th February 2017. Presently, Honorable Justice I.P. Mukherjee is the chairman of the Committee of West Bengal Judicial Academy, along with 6 other honorable judges of Calcutta High Court as its members. At the West Bengal Judicial Academy, we pursue the andragogy form of learning through visual, auditory, and kinesthetic processes with the participation of all the stakeholders of the judiciary. Today's topic confronts us with the gender sensitization, justness, and social media as the nascent challenges of judicial education. Tomorrow, that is 8th March, is celebrated as the International Women's Day every year to recognize and appreciate the contribution of women in society. Unfortunately, throughout the year, we come across instances of insensitivity towards girl child and women, culminating into innumerable cases of domestic violence, sexual offenses, kidnapping, human trafficking, and harassment at workplace, etc. The process of gender sensitization is aimed at eradicating discrimination based on gender inequality and disparity. The behavioral approach of every individual should intend to attain harmonious coexistence, irrespective of gender biasness, and to achieve the right of equality as enshrined in the Constitution of India, amongst others, in terms of life, liberty, education, profession, etc. Gender discrimination seems to burgeon at the embryonic stage, and to understand the quintessence of the same, we have discussions with the doctors and the professionals of the Health Department of Government of West Bengal on PC and PNDT Act, along with the judicial officers at our academy in terms of its culpability. We conduct regular sessions on adoption, both under the CARA guidelines as well as the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act 1956, human trafficking, child rights, sexual offenses against children, offenses against women, with the participation of various stakeholders under the Department of Women and Child Development and Social Welfare, State Commission for Protection of Child Rights, specialized adoption agencies, lawyers, police administration, DCPOs, etc. We also conduct sessions on inheritance and succession laws, marriage laws, maintenance laws, right of guardianship. We further intend to organize Convergence program with the Police Academy and the Administrative Training Institute of West Bengal to sensitize the members of the police administration and the district administration to discharge their duties impartially and with sensitivity, and to exchange experiences and best practices. We have conducted sessions on child psychology with the participation of presiding officers of the courts dealing with POCSO cases, the public prosecutors attached to such courts, the principal magistrates of the juvenile justice boards, the CWC members, and the social worker members. We also organize sensitization programs on gender justice, emphasizing Article 14, 15, 16, 21, 25, and Article 15, 1AE of the Constitution, with the insight into the right of children to Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009, the Criminal Law Amendment Act, the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act, the Dowry Prohibition Act, the Indecent Representation of Women's Prohibition Act, the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act, the Equal Remuneration Act, the Maternity Benefit Amendment Act, emphasizing the directive principles of the state policy of the Constitution to have created beneficial provision for women, such as equal pay for equal work for both men and women, just and human conditions of work, and also the Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, that is CEDAW 1979, which states that the rights of women are human rights which are non-negotiable and inalienable, and prohibits any discriminatory treatment to women, along with judicial pronouncements as in Vishakha and others versus State of Rajasthan, Lakshmi versus Union of India, Shaira Bano versus Union of India, Indian Young Lawyers Association versus State of Kerala, etc. We further propose to sensitize the staff of the High Court and the District Court on this particular subject. We propose to organize awareness programs for the secretaries of the District Legal Services Authorities, the paralegal volunteers, and the empaneled lawyers of the DLSA on various welfare schemes of the government to assist and empower the women, and also the objectives of the Legal Services Authority to disseminate the same across the districts at the grassroots level. We hope that the mindset of people will definitely change through constant sensitization programs. The second challenge is of justness. In the words of Justice J.B. Thomas, some standards can be prescribed by law, but the spirit of and the quality of the service rendered by a profession depends far more on its observance of ethical standards. These are far more rigorous than legal standards. They are learnt not by precept, but by the example and influence of the respective peers. Judicial standards are required, so as to speak, by professional osmosis. They are enforced immediately by the conscience. Justness is a quality or state of being just, fair, equitable, and right. It comprises the cornerstone of the justice dispensation and demands infallible adherence to the same. We, as judicial officers, should have incessant inclination and ardent desire to learn. Then only can we be motivated to learn by the academy. Otherwise, it will be a futile exercise, irrespective of the induction course, orientation course, refresher course, whatsoever. We need to introspect and realize that we are in a service of our own volition, and it is obligatory on us to fortify and preserve the distinctiveness of this institution, which is the repository of immense faith and trust of the public. It is an onus upon us, and we must pledge to follow and practice the Bangalore Principles of Judicial Conduct, namely the value of independence, impartiality, integrity, propriety, quality, competence, and diligence. We need to hone our skills of humility and humanity, which are imbued in us diligently and dedicatedly to be impeccable, immaculate, and exemplary for others to emulate. We need to work relentlessly to expect cooperation from others, be it fellow judicial officers, staff, lawyers, administrative machineries, and other stakeholders, motivate them to contribute respectively as a team. We need to work without fear or favor. We need to be firm and polite in our attitude towards others. We may not be able to satisfy everyone and may be subjected to the wrath of others, but we should not get demoralized. We need to be physically fit and mentally strong. Be positive and think positive in order to gradually become better versions of ourselves and garner the strength to surmount any obstacle to obstruct our duties and responsibilities as a judicial officer. In order to maintain and secure justness, the West Bengal Judicial Academy organizes regular sessions emphasizing Bangalore Principles of the Judicial Conduct 2022, courtroom decorum, judicial discipline and accountability, and also ethics. A colloquium on judicial ethics was held on 6 February 2021 at the initiative of Honorable Justice I.P. Mukherjee, the President of Committee of West Bengal Judicial Academy. We also have sessions on the appellate side rules of High Court at Calcutta, West Bengal Judicial Condition of Service rules, relevant provisions of the civil rules and orders of the High Court at Calcutta, criminal rules and orders of the High Court at Calcutta. It is said, justice delayed is justice denied. To achieve the goal of fair and speedy delivery of justice, our curriculum includes training sessions on court management and case management, judgment writing, administrative functioning of the DDOs, conduct of disciplinary proceedings, contempt of court, alternative dispute resolution mechanism with special emphasis on Section 89 of CPC. Sessions are also conducted on the process of mediation for the judicial officers and the lawyers. The judicial officers, staff, and lawyers are also trained to develop the knowledge of computer education, application, and data uploading under the eCourts project. Sessions on straits management are regularly conducted for the judicial officers to maintain a calm and composed mind. The third challenge, that is social media, has influenced human life in various ways. Namely, it has become an essential part of day-to-day life. It increases an overall awareness of the masses. It enhances the general knowledge of the people. It has brought about a major transformation in the way people think. It provides excellent platform to present oneself before the world to express his or her opinion. It has made the world a smaller global village. With the help of personal blogging, as citizens' journalism or other ways have led to the achievement of a social control. The media has played a major role in positive developments like fight against racism, gender bias, and world poverty, and spreading awareness about the need for world peace. One breaking news feed of a social networking society can have a devastating effect. However, people are also of the view that the social media has exposed the individual, especially the young mind, to violence, drug abuse, sex, and other unhealthy habits. Again, by virtue of social media, the right of privacy may be infringed by utilizing private data already collected for a purpose other than for which it was collected. Sending of unsolicited emails, unauthorized reading of emails of others. According to Section 79(1) of the Information Technology Act 2000, notwithstanding anything contained in any law for the time being in force, but subject to the provisions of subsection 2 and 3, an intermediary shall not be liable for any third-party information, data, or communication link hosted by him. Recently, Information Technology Guidelines for Intermediaries and Digital Media Ethics Code Rule 2021 was issued, which mentions, inter alia, the due diligence by an intermediary. An intermediary include including social media intermediary, shall observe the following due diligence while discharging its duties, namely, not to host, display, upload, modify, publish, transmit, store, update, or share any information that belongs to another person and to which the user does not have any right, is defamatory, obscene, pornographic, invasive of another's privacy, including bodily privacy, insulting or harassing on the basis of gender, libelous, racially or ethically objectionable, relating or encouraging money laundering or gambling or otherwise inconsistent with or contrary to the laws in force, is harmful to child, infringes any patent, trademark, copyright, or other proprietary rights, violates any law for the time being in force, deceives or misleads the addressee about the origin of the message, or knowingly and intentionally communicates any information which is patently false or misleading in nature, but may reasonably be perceived as a fact, amongst other provisions. It further mandates wherein intermediary fails to observe these rules, the provision of subsection 1 of 79 of the Act shall not be applicable to such intermediary, and the intermediary shall be liable for punishment under any law for the time being in force, including provisions of the Act and the Indian Penal Code. Given the nature of judicial office and the vital importance of public confidence in the integrity and impartiality of the courts, the use of social media by judges, both individually and collectively, raises specific questions and ethical risks that should be addressed. In its formal opinion dated 21st February 2013 on judges' use of electronic social networking media, the American Bar Association Model Code of Judicial Conduct was amended by the ABA House of Delegates, which states, a judge may participate in electronic social networking, but as with all social relationships and contacts, a judge must comply with relevant provisions of the Code of Judicial Conduct and avoid any conduct that would undermine the judge's independence, integrity, or impartiality, or create an appearance of impropriety. Based on a collective study, we can understand that judges may join on social networks. Social networks create opportunities and temptations for ex parte communication that the judges must be careful to avoid. Judges are still judges when posting materials on their social networking pages and need to realize that the kinds of comments and photographs posted by others may not be appropriate for them. Judges need to avoid online ties to organizations that discriminate, just as they are prohibited from joining such organizations. Judges also need to avoid online ties with organizations which may have the advocates before the court. Judges need to avoid posting comments on social network sites or taking other actions on such sites that lend the prestige of the judge's office to the advancements of a private interest. Social networks, with their instant communication, informality, and lightning quick lamp to the public realm, are a danger zone for the judges, who are obligated to always be dignified and circumspect. Therefore, the impact of social media on individual communication and connectivity across the world has immensely influenced the society, both positively and negatively. The increase in the statistics of cybercrime is a worst consequence of the effect of social media. In West Bengal Judicial Academy, we conduct regular sessions on investigation in cybercrime cases, effective role of prosecution in cybercrime cases, importance of mobile forensic in cybercrime investigation, intellectual property rights along with the intellectual property litigations in India, intellectual property crimes, and safe harbor. We also intend to organize a session on the recent information technology rules. In the event of such evolving menace, to maintain the individual independence, integrity, and propriety, we as judicial officers should discern, be discreet, restrain, and restrict the use of social media as far as practicable to vindicate the demeanor and conduct of the office. the West Bengal Judicial Academy further proposes to conduct training of the personnel, including the secretaries of the District Legal Services Authority, to spread awareness concerning the use of social media and the effect of cyber crimes, to generate awareness amongst the students at the legal aid clinics established in the schools and colleges under the direction of the National Legal Services Authority. We believe that with concerted endeavor and continuous practice, with the convergence of the stakeholders unitedly, with best of intentions, we will be able to combat the challenges and pave way for a better tomorrow. I thank everyone for having been given me the opportunity to be here. I am humbled and obliged. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ananya Bandhopadhyay, for your kind words. And now I would like to welcome Honorable Srimati Justice Nandita Dubey, Judge, High Court of Madhya Pradesh, for her kind words on this particular topic.
Thank you. Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Chief Justices of the High Courts, my esteemed sister and brother judges on the dais, off the dais, esteemed dignitaries present here. I am the child. All the world waits for my coming. All the earth watches with interest to see what I shall become. Civilization hangs in the balance. For what I am, the world of tomorrow will be. I am the child. You hold in your hand my destiny. You determine largely whether I shall succeed or fail. Give me, I pray you, these things that makes for happiness. Train me, I beg you, that I may be a blessing to the world. These lines by Mamie Jean Cole aptly describe the anguish and cry of a helpless female child, asking for protection, encouragement, and opportunity to develop, to be groomed, to be able to blossom in such an atmosphere that she may live with human dignity in the society. Our Constitution fosters and strengthens the spirit of equality and prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex. Equality not only implies recognition of individual dignity, but also includes, within its sphere, the assurance of equal opportunity to advance and develop their human potential, social, economic, and legal interest of every individual. The court, as the final arbiter of the Constitution, has to keep in view the necessities of the weaker gender in consonance with the current demands and situations. The role of the court assumes further importance when the members of this gender become the object of humiliation, discrimination, separation, and violence by not only the society at large, but also at the hands of their very own family members. The development of law cannot be a mute spectator to the struggle for the realization and attainment of the rights of such members of the society, nor can it remain oblivious to the fact that society is constantly evolving and many variations may emerge with the changing times. Media exerts immense influential power on the masses. Unfortunately, portrayal of women as equal has not been given priority it deserves. This, however, cannot be undermined that despite all the bad press it garners, social media has opened a new frontier for women's rights movement and helped create linkage between feminist networks and individuals, not only to mobilize attention, but to share experience and call for greater public accountability in tackling violence against the women. The extent to which women are represented in public life and in decision-making process has a gendered impact on the policy making. Despite the high visibility and success of many of these campaigns, the extent to which women's online activism has been able to shape and influence policy making remains patchy and unpredictable. Unfortunately, easy access to social media has also led to increasing criticism and dissenting opinion and comments about the judiciary. As in the last session, in the yesterday's session, Justice Bhatt has rightly pointed out that the best way to deal with it is to ignore it. To achieve the goal of gender justice, it is imperative that not only our judicial officers, judges, members of the bar, including public prosecutors, be sensitized through awareness programs and training to create judicial empathy with the victim. Cases involving intersecting forms of discrimination, exclusion should be carefully reviewed. While dealing with the cases involving crime against women, the court has to adopt a realistic yardstick. The courts have to be exceedingly sensitive, vigilant, and alert that during the trial, the victim of crime is not unnecessarily harassed, nor the criminal be allowed to escape on account of procedural technicalities or insignificant lacuna in the evidence. The fact is that mere enactment of laws will not be sufficient in delivery of effective social justice. Our approach in this regard should change. A wider social movement of educating women of their rights to conquer this menace is needed. Not only men, but women are also required to be sensitized in this aspect. It is noteworthy to mention that gender sensitivity is not about pitting women against men. On the contrary, education that is gender sensitive benefits members of both the sexes. Gender awareness not only requires intellectual efforts, but also sensitivity and open-mindedness. We have the privilege of organizing this session on gender sensitization on the eve of International Women's Day, a day which is also a call for action for accelerating gender parity. But before I conclude, I may profitably quote a passage from the decision rendered in the case of Mukesh versus State, 2017, Volume 6, SEC 1. Stringent legislation and punishment alone may not be sufficient for fighting increasing crimes against women. In our tradition-bound society, certain attitudinal changes and change in the mindset is needed to respect women and to ensure gender justice. Right from childhood years, children ought to be sensitized to respect women. A child should be taught to respect women in the society in the same way as he is taught to respect men. Gender equality should be made a part of school curriculum. The school teachers and parents should be trained not only to conduct regular personality building and skill enhancing exercise, but also to keep a watch on the actual behavioral pattern of the children so as to make them gender sensitized. The educational institutions, government institutions, the employers, and all concerned must take steps to create awareness with regard to gender sensitization and to respect women. Sensitization of the public on gender justice through TV, media, and press should be welcome. Apart from effective implementation of various legislation protecting women, change in the mindset of the society at large and creating awareness in the public on gender justice would go a long way to combat violence against women. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Srimati Justice Nandita Dubey. Woman is like a reed which bends at every breeze but breaks not even in the tempest. That's her beauty, that's her strength. But to safeguard that strength, we look up to fair and speedy justice. To continue, may I now request Honorable Shri Justice Sandeep Mehta, Judge, Rajasthan High Court and Chairman, Rajasthan State Judicial Academy, to express his views on this topic.
Good afternoon to the dignitaries on the dais and off the dais, ladies and gentlemen. I take this opportunity firstly to thank Honorable Justice Mohammad Rafiq Saab, Honorable Chief Justice Madhya Pradesh High Court, the Madhya Pradesh High Court and the Madhya Pradesh Judicial Academy to have given us this opportunity of meeting with each other and sharing our views on really needy topics, the topics which need discussion, and which we have been prevented from doing for the last more than 1 year because of the COVID pandemic. The arrangements which have been made are fantastic, and since Justice Rafiq Saab comes from Rajasthan, the flavor of Aditi Devo Namaha, which is imbibed in every Rajasthani, has been extended to Madhya Pradesh, and I am thankful to all. Now the topic of today's discussion is a very intricate, interwoven topic: gender sensitization, justness, and social media, and the nascent challenges of judicial education. So keeping the topic in mind, I have penned down few words which I would like to share with you. Change, it has been famously said, is only constant in life. While we are all accustomed in one or the other way in dealing with change, incidentally, we are living in an era of information technology revolution where change is happening at an unprecedented and unimaginably fast pace. 5 years, as I observe, these days is a time for a generation gap. I've heard final years engineering or medical or law students mentioning generation gap with their first year counterparts. Generations are changing at the pace of new generations of word processors. By the time we learn something, it becomes outdated. However, any change, even a change for the better, is always accompanied by drawbacks, discomforts, and challenges. And challenge for any society always has been how to deal with these drawbacks and discomforts. Freedom comes with its own costs. Information and technology revolution has been a big equalizer in society. It has potential of strengthening transparency, accountability, and democracy. However, it has also forced upon us a range of contradictions and paradoxes. Internet, World Wide Web connects people, but it also makes us loners. We are with everyone 24/7, but with no one. Everyone wants to be fiercely individualistic and private persons. Social norms seem to be big obstructions, but everyone also likes to receive as many likes from the same society on personal pictures. We want to share and every detail of our lives on social media, but want our privacy to be respected. We live in an era which is forcing us to question the way we understood the world around us. Protection of our homes is being replaced by a constant threat of overexposure. We need to rethink everything, our understanding of time and space, of human relations, of genders and gender relations. Law for a long time was believed to be the precursor of social change. These are the times when technological and social changes are taking lead, forcing law and law enforcers to follow the course. While every individual and every section of society needs to deal with an almost new world, the challenges for the judiciary and legal system are unique and unprecedented. Task for the judges is difficult, and for the judicial academy is even more daunting. For judiciary, living in the current age poses two challenges: understanding gender and gender relations within the organization, and the second, in our judicial work. Addressing the first challenge is an important task for the judicial academies, as gone are the days of inhabiting ivory towers, if at all. Glass houses are our new habitat. We are under the prying eyes of media surveillance and public scrutiny. Anything and everything that you say and do in your court may become public knowledge within the next minute. The requirement to be a judge and behave like one has never been more pertinent. But then, what does it mean to be like a judge? So, since social media is a new way to connect with surroundings and society, is that possibility always available to a judge? Does a young judicial officer have or should have liberty to share pictures of his personal trip on a social media site? Is he or she allowed to have friends or followers list on such a network? Gender relations within the judicial organization have to be rethought, and the judicial academies and judicial education has to play the onerous task of making that happen. Our sensitivities, sensibilities, and even understanding of a very neutral term like harassment needs deep rethinking. Judicial academies have to be the places which facilitate introspection as judges, as individuals, as members of an institution. If we shift attention towards judicial work, it is almost right to say that sensitivity, especially gender sensitivity, is one of the most important elements of the task of judging. Judges, we all know, need to be geared to the changing social norms and gender relations. Dealing with one's own biases and predilections has been a constant challenge for every judge. Being sensitive is not a one-time portion which can be delivered by the academies. It is a constant exercise, and judicial academies have been trying to address these concerns. Judicial education, we all know, is not only about imparting knowledge of law. Detecting and accepting bias in one's own thinking process is an initial step towards sensitivity and effective adjudication. Judicial academies have this onerous responsibility to create an environment where above can be possible. Responsibility is onerous because we are now in an era where lines between right and wrong, moral and immoral, decency and openness acceptable and objectionable are constantly blurring. There is no exact translation of the beautiful word maryada, which something which denoted self-regulation. But can that be taught? How we inculcate this value in our young judicial officers as they become part of the organization? As judges, task of adjudication is difficult because difference between law and morality needs to be sharper and observation of constitutional values to be more stringent. Concepts like obscenity, morality, freedom, privacy have a new meaning. When a famous model or an actor posts his nude pictures clicked by his young wife on a social media website, is it to be considered obscene and objectionable? Is it defamatory to post pictures of a woman judicial officer in the company of the male colleagues? There are many more instances, and undoubtedly, none yield to easy answers. In the last few years, litigation relating to harm to reputation defamation has increased. Need to provide safe environment to everyone, especially women, is an essential requirement. Current times, therefore, need judges who, as important elements in the legal system, can steer the society but can refrain from imposing one's own moral beliefs and values. We need judges who can ensure that legal system offers protection without being paternalistic. Judges are expected to enhance freedom but to come down heavily on transgressions. We need to maximize not only freedom but also responsibility and civility. There is a need for constant brainstorming on what are transgressions or civility. There is a constant need to understand whether our understanding of these notions embodies any kind of gender bias. Do we have different and gendered expectations of civility and responsibility from men and women? Offenses like cyberstalking, voyeurism have found way in our statute books and complaints are on the increase. Needless to say, none of the above requirements are easy to fulfill, nor can they be done by an individual alone. That is where the role of judicial academies and judicial education becomes important. Programs focused on knowledge of law and legal analysis are important. But a most important requirement is a curriculum which deals with judges as individuals, as human beings with divergent attitudes and predilections, and works towards bringing it in harmony of current age and constitutional values. That is why what we need is judicial education, perhaps not the judicial training, something which we can encourage constant engagement with one's own self. Ultimately, it is all about thinking. As Albert Einstein famously said, the world as we have created, it is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. Now, having been privileged to share the dais on the forenoon of the International Women's Day with two mothers and great judges who are juggling both the tasks, Honorable Justice Nagaratna and Honorable Justice Nandita, I'll share a beautiful poem which again I received on social media to end my speech. माँ बदल रही है, माँ अब दिखती नहीं मैली साड़ी में, काम करती दिन भर नजर आती है ट्रेंडी जीन्स में, पर अपने लिए भी समय निकाल रही है, माँ बदल रही है, चूल्हे के धुएं से अब आंखें नहीं होती लाल, स्मार्ट किचन में नई रेसिपी बनाती बेमिसाल, जब मन नहीं होता स्विगी से पार्सल मंगवा रही है, सच माँ बदल रही है, पापा के सामने हर बात पर नहीं फैलाती हाथ, नहीं सास और पति की खाती डांट, कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर सारा भार उठा रही है, सच माँ बदल रही है, पुराने दिनों का राग नहीं सुनाती, सास ननद जवाई का नखरा नहीं लेती, नहीं कहती औरत यही तेरी यही कहानी, बेटे को पराठे और बेटी को कराटे सिखा रही है, सच माँ बदल रही है, माँ अब हंसती है नाचती है, मर मर्जी से जीती है, समय के साथ बदलती है, जैसी चाहे रहती है, पर बच्चे का रोना सुनते ही थम जाते हैं कदम, तब लगता है क्या सचमुच माँ बदल रही है? उत्तर, माँ पूरी बदल रही है, पर उसकी ममता उसका प्यार नहीं बदला। और आज के इस युग में इस बदली हुई माँ की ज़रूरत है जो समय के साथ, समाज के साथ, बच्चों के साथ, जनरेशन के साथ बदले, क्योंकि बदलाव प्रगति की निशानी है। थैंक यू। जय हिंद।
Thank you very much. A very beautiful way to end the speech. And now, with the kind permission of Honorable Shri Justice Pankaj Mittal, we invite all the judges for open discussions. Sir, with your permission. Okay, then. Okay, then may I invite co-chair Honorable Mrs. Justice B.V. Nagaratna, Judge High Court of Karnataka and President Karnataka Judicial Academy for her ladyship's remark.
Good afternoon, everybody. Honorable Justice Pankaj Mittal, Chief Justice, High Court of Jammu and Kashmir, and the chairperson of this session. Honorable Justice Harish Chandra Mishra, Judge, High Court of Jharkhand, and the co-chair. My esteemed panelists, Honorable Justice Oak, Chief Justice Oak, Honorable Chief Justice Dipankar Datta, my esteemed brother and sister judges, learned directors, judicial officers, distinguished invitees, and my dear students. I think it was 8th of March 2006, and I was moving a memo before a learned judge of our High Court, and his court was very popular. Many people, many advocates used to move memos, and being short as I am, there were memos being moved above my head. And it was 8th of March, and the learned judge said, let us allow the lady to move the memo first because it's 8th of March. Then I told the judge, my lord, let it be 8th of March every day of the year. This is what actually is gender sensitization about. Now there are two ways of looking about gender sensitization. The ideal thing is to not have any gender at all in society, whether it is male, female, or transgender. Everybody is a personality, independent, irrespective of gender, and should be considered as such. But we are not in a utopian society or in an ideal society, therefore the need for gender sensitization. And the other aspect of the topic today is justness. Where do we look at justness? It is a very subjective word, but I would look at it only from Article 14, 15.1, 15.3, 16, and Article 21. The other aspect is Article 51E, where we have the fundamental duty. These articles in the Constitution, and of course the international treaties, they are our guidance to have justness. Now, the other aspect is, what do we do about gender sensitization and how we treat the subject in our judicial academies? Now, let me very humbly state that in our academy we have started a course of having 40 judges in one training program, which is a 3-day program on gender sensitization. And the program is prefaced by our Chief Justice message. And for 3 days, every judicial officer in our state is to undergo that program. Now, what is the object of that? The object of that is as to how we, the judicial officers, conduct ourselves in the courts, outside the courts, with regard to the aspect of gender sensitization. In that program, what we tell them is not just the conduct and demeanor in the courts, but to know more about this subject, the judges must be informed about the historical and cultural background in which there is deprivation, not just for the women, but also the transgender. They must strike a balance when it comes to issues relating to gender justice, so that the confidence is built up in the system when it comes to the issues of women or transgender. The attitude of the judges, the presiding officers, when they deal with women victims, seekers of justice, as to whether the trial itself is a trauma, this is another aspect which we deal. The conduct of the trial and the adjudication should not be a torture or a reliving of victims, particularly women who have suffered sexual assault. In this regard, what we do is we explain the stakeholders in the judicial system, particularly the women and the transgender. They need not be just
the litigants who are seeking justice. They are women advocates, women staff, women witnesses, women presiding officers. At every stage and at every category we have women, and also I would include transgender more and more coming into the system. Then how do we deal when it comes to these issues? Every stakeholder, particularly a woman, must be treated with dignity. The judicial officer must not make any observation or any action which would have an adverse effect on the woman, particularly if she is a victim or if she is a witness. The judge should not give an impression that he or she has some kind of bias against the women who raise these issues or the women witnesses. The issues raised, particularly in the context of women's rights, should not be thought of in a light manner, but there must be a meaningful thinking on those issues. Recording of evidence when it comes to evidence given by women, how we deal with the women witnesses. These are some of the aspects which I think the judicial academies must teach our judicial officers when it comes to dealing with gender issues. That is the kind of sensitization they must have. Then when now the other topic is with regard to the media and the gender sensitization. Of course, that itself is a very elaborate subject, but briefly touching upon that, I would say that the internet availability is so strong everywhere and new channels of circulation. As a result, there is more and more defamatory material on the internet rather than there being sharing of information or dissemination of news. Online defamation is a challenge, and when it comes to such kind of cases, how our judicial officers are going to cope with it. Therefore, in that regard, we have what is known as electronic evidence training in our academy. District-wise, we have been training our judges to be familiar with how to deal with electronic evidence. Apart from that, we should know that when it comes to these issues connected with electronic media, the right to freedom of speech and expression must be balanced with the right to privacy. When there are two competing fundamental rights, ultimately, which is the right which must have an uppermost hand? I feel that it's my humble opinion that when it comes to right to freedom of speech and expression versus right to privacy, the right to privacy must have an upper hand because it is relatable to Article 21, though we don't have that right within the scope of Article 19(2) as a reasonable restriction. But Article 21 is very broad enough, and therefore it should be looked into that article. Now, therefore, it is a challenge for the judicial academies to sensitize our judges so that ultimately we, the judicial officers, don't portray to the society that we have a bias or a prejudice when it comes to women's issues or issues of transgender. I can give you one other example. It was highlighted in the media also. A matter was going on with regard to divorce, and a young lady of advocate was arguing it, and the presiding judge said, "Are you married? How can you argue such a case? Should we make such kind of observations in court?" These are the things we should sensitize our officers, and that is what we are trying to do in the academy. And there is a lot more to be said, but I am conscious of the time constraint. With these few words, I thank the Madhya Pradesh Judicial Academy for having given me this opportunity to share a few of my thoughts, and I thank each one of you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mrs. Justice B.V. Nagaratna. It is time that we all see gender as a spectrum instead of two sets of opposing ideals. With this, now may I invite co-chair Honorable Shri Justice Harish Chandra Mishra, Judge High Court of Jharkhand and Judge in Charge, Judicial Academy, Jharkhand, for his lordship's remark.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mr. Justice Pankaj Mittal on the chair, Honorable Chief Justices of the various high courts, brothers and sister judges and directors of Judicial Academy on the dais, of the dais, vice chancellors, dear students. I shall be very brief and I shall be only giving you some food to think. And I beg your excuse for sounding a bit different. Our topic is gender sensitization, justness and social media. I would like to place more emphasis on the term justness. Friends, when we talk about gender sensitization, we have in our minds males and females only. And I'm thankful to Justice Nagaratna today that she has remembered the third gender also. No one else had spoken about it earlier. And when we think about females, the word, inverted comma, woman empowerment come to our mind. We completely forget about the third gender, even though they are the most discriminated against people in the world. Why I said that I would give more emphasis to justness? The answer lies here. Why not equality to third gender also? If this should not be the platform to talk about their equality also, or sensitizing ourselves on the third gender also, can we say that our goal of gender sensitization is complete? Again, we talk about women empowerment. Why? Because we have treated women as a weaker sex. So don't treat them as a weaker sex. That's all. Treat them equally. Treat people of all genders equally, be it male, female, or third gender. And that will serve the purpose. No need to infuse more power in the people of any gender. Equal treatment to all the genders should be the motto. And after all, why gender sensitization should be aimed only towards one gender only? Why should it not be a male issue as well? Why should it not be a third gender issue as well? According to 2011 census, the number of people belonging to third gender is 4.9 lakhs. But it is expected that this figure is too on the lower side, and it should be more. Kindly ponder how many of them are in some good positions. Assam has recently given recognition to the third gender in their civil services exams, and perhaps one person belonging to third gender has been chosen also. The time has come, and perhaps in the judiciary, in whole of India, there are three persons. The time has come that our sensitization should be for gender neutrality. Don't victimize, don't patronize, treat equally. This is what the thinking process is now heading towards worldwide. Use of gender neutral terms, not gender specific terms, such as chair or chairperson, not chairman or chairwoman. No Mr., Mrs., Miss, but MS. Common person in place of common man. Humankind in place of mankind. Firefighter in the place of fireman. Good human being, what the judge should be, not a good man or not a good woman or not a good third gender person. In fact, a list of vocabulary is available on Google Guru for replacing gender specific terms by gender neutral terms. Similarly, we should avoid identifying the roles by genders. Nurses need not be females only. Likewise, combat army need not be males only. All such positions may be filled by all the people irrespective of their genders, and this is what we are heading towards now. So, if we head towards the gender neutrality, the goal of empowerment shall be achieved of all the genders, and there will be no distinction according to the people's sex or gender. Friends, this is what the few words with these few words, I want to just give a food to think how our judicial officers should be sensitized for gender neutrality by all the academies across the country. With these few words, I thank Madhya Pradesh Judicial Academy for giving me this opportunity to share my views with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Shri Justice Harish Chandra Mishra. Very well said that a gender equal open discussion. Okay. Yes. So the house is open, and please raise your hand or rise from your chair so that we can provide you with microphones.
He is asking some question. Okay. So same question probably.
Honorable esteemed speakers on the dais, very good afternoon. And my question is that in Nipun Saxena versus Union of India, the Honorable Apex Court has passed a slew of direction, which includes one direction about the concealing the identity of a victim of rape, not only by her name, but also by her father's name and village. But I have been confronted with a question that where the victim is the daughter of the accused, how the court would conceal the identity of the victim in that case?
Normally, the identity of the victim has to be kept secret.
My lord.
But it may not be possible in every case.
My lord.
So it will not apply as an absolute rule.
My lord.
That is all.
I want to supplement the Honorable Chief Justice. In one case, I have found that the Honorable Judge was writing victim X, daughter of Y.
Identity of it.
And I think this will answer your question.
Yes. Even in that event, the identity gets disclosed. It cannot be made an absolute rule. Yes. Women.
Anybody else?
And yes, Brother Mishra.
Actually, I have a practical problem since a very erudite panelist sitting here. A few days back, I was hearing some bail applications, which was before me, about 6 or 8 months back. It's a tied-up matter. First, a case came of rape of a minor girl by elder man. A 438 application was filed. And a very known lady advocate was arguing for the petitioner. She argued very passionately. I said, no, madam, I am not going to grant you anticipated bail in this case. Then the second application was of a rape. It's a promise to marry, relationship of 4 years. And the lady then said that he refused to marry me. So this is a rape case. As everybody knows, a few days back on the Supreme Court has said that it's not a case of rape. So I thought that this is not a case. Curiously enough, in that same case, that advocate appeared for the informant and started objecting to the bail application. So I thought that it's a bit of contradiction for a lady advocate who is at one breath asking for bail for a petitioner who has allegedly raped a minor girl, and a POCSO Act section has been charged against him, and register a bail application where there should be. In such a how to handle such kind of a situation? I like to get the reaction of Justice Nagaratnam and Justice Madam Nandita.
So why is it only a contradiction if a lady advocate appears and not if a male advocate appears?
I'm not saying that
Madam, we were very curious to know that.
It actually happened. It's not that I'm cooking of a hypothetical question or this thing. It actually happened.
Sir, advocates are professional people. They can appear for accused, they can be prosecutors. I mean, it all depends on each case. There's no contradiction there. Pardon? Yes. So may I share one?
Yes.
With the permission of the chair, I want to also share one other experience. In 2016, the civil judges were recruited, and the High Court intimated the officers about the taking of the oath. Then there was this one lady officer. She came and met the Registrar General. She said her date for delivery was any time, and she was not sure whether she could make it for the oath. Then the question arose as to whether she would lose her seniority. And I must confess that some of my male colleagues said yes, she would lose her seniority because she didn't take the oath on that particular day. How could she? Then she went back home. Then the lady delivered, and she couldn't obviously come the next day or 2 days later to come and take the oath. Then some of us lady colleagues, we protested. That time Chief Justice Mukherjee was there. We said, how can she lose her seniority? And as of those of us who know Justice Mukherjee, he said, if you are protesting so much, I'll go to the nursing home and give her oath. I said that would be the most ideal thing to do. But then on the 5th day after her delivery, she came and took the oath in the Chief Justice chamber because she was apprehensive about it. So these are the small things where we can make a big difference. This is, Article 21. How do you expect a lady who has just delivered to rush and come and take the oath? Otherwise, she would lose her seniority. How we view women's issues when we relate it to marriage, pregnancy, menstruation, and whatnot details. I mean, these are some of the things which are asked even in the, forms which are there given. They want to know whether, for example, to take a very, very crude example, the LIC wanted to know whether the menstruation of the lady officers was timely, irregular, or whether she was taking medicines for it and whatnot. See, these are the issues. Gender sensitization means we should know all these things, and our judicial officers should not commit such kind of things, such kind of errors during the course of adjudication. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Yes.
Normally in temples, because of Madam said, it's a natural menstrual cycle, women officers are not posted. But in our state, almost half of the executive officers of the temples are women.
That's good.
Women.
Please repeat.
Executive, temple officers.
Temple office. It comes under the control of our Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowments Department. We have got a Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowments Act 1959. Normally, you know that women during menstrual cycle not allowed to even enter. Those are the good, bad. I think rather say it's a bad time. As far as our state is concerned, they are allowed to occupy the set post. At least half of them, to my knowledge, are female officers.
So that's a
So
good
it is
thing.
good thing.
That's a good thing,
They
progressive
are
thing.
doing it, it is very progressive. We are changing. Thank you.
Hello, my lord.
Any other question? Yes, Mr. Mishra?
I want to raise an academic question from Dr. Chauhan. What might have prompted constitution makers to use word sex instead of gender in Article 15 and 16 of Indian Constitution? Because so far as I think the word sex is a term of wider connotation in comparison to the words gender.
Thank you very much. I think my friend is sitting here. He is an expert of constitutional law, but I will ask him to supplement what I am going to say. Sir, as I told you in the beginning, there is a difference between these two terms, and most of us confuse, because when I said in 92 when I went there, Professor Baun said that no women are seen, but in 2021 there are many women. What has happened? It is because of the education. It is because of the change in the consciousness, thinking, thought process of the social order. Because the legal order which we are having through constitution, through rules and regulations, acts, it is there. But when it comes in, by the time it is in unison with the social order, everything is all right. The moment it comes in conflict with it, because you said Article 15, 16, the word sex, no discrimination on the basis of sex. What Madam was telling, girl child, male child, because sir, gender, understanding about the gender comes through development, improvement. You see, it's a continuous process, how much gender sensitive you are. Now we are talking about the transgenders, we are talking about everything. But basically initial protection in 1950, when we gave this constitution to ourselves, the biggest challenge before the constitution maker was how to protect our women, how to provide them safety, security, equality, liberty, and right to property. Because initial debate which started in this country, it was centered on three issues. Number one, widow marriage. Number two, child marriage. And third was right to property. Hindu code will was the first answer. But you see, this constitution, I remember the words which have been written by the Falius Nariman. Falius Nariman has written that Indian law is an English transplant with Anglo-Saxon roots, nourished in Indian soil. It was intended to be an oak tree, but it has transformed into a banyan tree, whose cereal roots are transcending from its branches. How it has transformed from oak to banyan tree? Because of you, sir, judiciary. You see, it is the judiciary which is bringing the change, fresh air. It is, I am sorry to say, our politicians are not having that much time in the parliament to discuss, debate, and provide guidance. But it is the judiciary at High Court level, at Supreme Court. Our district officers are not having that opportunity. But our High Courts and the Supreme Courts, and the way they are trying to infuse justness in the system. And I think, sir, you think from that point of view, then you will understand initially the challenge was to protect the half of the population of this country. And it happened in USA also, sir, when they said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, US Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. They have been endowed by the Creator the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Elizabeth, after 100 years, objected. She said that, what is it? We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal. Now we will have to add one more word. All men, women and transgender. So, sir, I think, and Professor Vijay, if you would like to supplement something, then you are welcome. Otherwise, sir, if you are satisfied, then it's good. And because I am not the specialist of constitutional law, I will say specialize in criminal law, sir, law of evidence. Thank you very much.
Sir, with the permission of Honorable Chair, Professor Chauhan, may I be supplementary to the Professor Chauhan that because while enactment the law, the legal provisions are being made grammatically in the masculine gender under the common presumption that the he includes she, perhaps the succession law is an exception to that, more particularly before 2005, which says that the masculine gender does not include female. So that this kind of mental approach we should have to inculcate in our system that he includes she each and every time, all time in all places. I think this is the perfect answer of the gender discrimination.
General Clauses Act.
This is there in general clauses.
General clauses.
Yes, yes. This is there in the general clauses. Thank you.
But she includes he because SHE.
Yes.
So,
Men.
yes,
True.
that's why I said ultimately she includes he.
So in short, I guess a gender equals society would be one where the word gender does not exist, be it men, women, or third gender. We all will be just ourselves, so everyone will be just themselves. That's the society we are thinking of. Thank you so very much for the discussion. It was a very fruitful discussion indeed. Now I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Chair Honorable Shri Justice Pankaj Mithal, Chief Justice, High Court of Jammu and Kashmir, for his Lordship's concluding remarks and keynote address.
A very good afternoon to all. Namaste. In this fourth session today, we are discussing mainly gender sensitization, justice and social media. Brother Rafiq has taken care of this gender sensitization, and he has equally divided the dais, 3 panelists, the women, and 3 on my left, the male members. So I am the odd man out, but maybe you can say I am balancing. Balancing. It was a treat to hear the panelists and the sister Nagaratna and brother Mishra, and it has made my job a little easy. Everything has been said. The only thing is I have to just sum up what has been said by all the members with slight remarks of my own. So what would be coming from me is like a bare act with notes, not a commentary. The first speaker was Professor Chauhan, and he tried to brought out the distinction between legal education and judicial education, and how technique of civilization is transmitted through education and the judicial culture by imparting judicial education. And he laid stress on independence of judiciary. Professor Bandyopadhyay, she highlighted about the 8th of March, the International Women's Day. On that eve we are meeting, it is good. She said justice delayed is justice denied, but there is an antithesis to it also. Justice hurried is justice buried. So we should not go by these slogans at all. The judges at least should avoid going by these slogans. It can cut both ways. Social media, she spoke about, it has made the world a smaller place. Indeed, we are getting smaller the way we are reacting to these social items on the social media. And the social media, it has transformed our life towards betterment, but it has certainly increased the crime. cyber crimes are on the rise. This is a new line of crimes we are dealing with. And it has made us live, as my brother also said, in a glass house. We are living in a glass house. Our lives are transparent. At one place, we ask for privacy, and at the other place, we are making ourselves too transparent. So a balance has to be struck between these two things. Justice Sister Nandita Dubey, she referred to a case of Mukesh and state and probably said we have to change our aptitude, our mindset, if we has to brought about gender equality. That is the right thing. From the school level, we have to be taught that there is no distinction, all human beings are born equal and we should treat them equal. The mindset is changing, but it will definitely take some time. We are not living 50 years back. If we compare to what we used to be, I can just, with my own experience, tell you that at the time when I was very young, school going, my mother, she always wore a sari. And we used to question, if the sister goes in salwar suit, she wears jeans also, the bell bottoms, but why you only wear sari? Well, you know, that is the tradition, the family doesn't allow. So she always wore sari. But now we have changed. Girls, even daughters-in-law, they are all allowed to, they are free to dress up in the manner they want. My wife is there, she is little short, and maybe because of her size also, in spite of the fact she has all freedom to wear jeans, etc., but she would prefer sari because it suits her. So it is not that the women are being forced to live in a particular way. They are not being allowed a freedom. They had the freedom, but sometimes of their own violation, they don't come out. They think the way we are living, that is good enough. So we should not brood on this, that there is no freedom to the women, they are not being allowed to come out in the society. That may not be the exact position, because there are number of factors which compel or which make the woman remain as a housewife or a housemaker. They may not, but under compulsion, when they see that they are not able to run the house, there is a requirement of earning a livelihood, they very well come out and able to do and manage everything. Now, Brother Sandeep Mehta was the next panelist. He emphasized that change is constant in life, especially in this era of information and technology. He said maryada, self-restraint, that is very important. And this is life all about. This is what our Bhagwan Shri Ramchandra also taught us, Maryada Purushottam. He was not Leela Purushottam like Krishna Bhagwan. He was Maryada Purushottam. He laid the way the people should lead their life in every kind of relationship. And that is what we are following. And we look upon him as an ideal. So self-restraint is the best way out. He ended his speech, "Maa badal rahi hai." It was a wonderful poem, और वास्तव में केवल माँ ही नहीं बदल रही है, हमारा समाज भी बदल रहा है, हमारा राष्ट्र भी बदल रहा है. Our opinion towards women is changing. It may be a slow process, but definitely we are changing, and ladies and women, they are coming forward in all pursuits of life. So it is a good sign. I think we keep it up, and some attitude in some downtrodden area or the people with low means, there this mindset has to be changed. We are not changing at that level. The educated people, they are of course different altogether. My sister said we should give up with the word gender. No gender, nothing. No male, no female. It's a good idea. We can think of adopting, giving up the column in all forms where we are asked to put the gender, male or female. Even in railway reservation, we are asked to fill whether you are male or female. So that should be given up. We are all equal. Let us not have any column like this. It is a good suggestion and we should work on it. And those people who want some reservation under the category of female or women, they can have a sheet annexed separately, but not in the form itself. There should be any column for male or female. Brother Mishra spoke on a totally different line about the transgenders and the third gender, giving some benefits to them and to bring them also in equality. That is a good thought, but we are lagging behind. That third gender has not been so much well recognized by our society. They have their own customs, and I am told that when a person of a transgender dies, they are not taken to the cremation ground during the daytime. They are always taken in the night. No one probably has seen any transgender going to the cremation ground. So these are the old taboos which our society has been following, but probably with time these things will also change. It is no longer considered a taboo, and as he himself pointed out, even in judiciary there are persons. In Gorakhpur, a mayor in UP, a mayor was elected belonging to a transgender class. So there is no problem in that also. Now, as far as my personal thinking is concerned, judiciary is taking good care of this social evil. See, humans by nature, they are a social animal. They tend to live in a society. And once people start living in a society, some kind of discrepancy do appear. And this is the reason why this gender discrepancy had appeared on our national scene also. Time and again, social reformers, they tried to resolve these social evils. In some way they were successful also. Now with the Constitution, our preamble itself says equality of status and of opportunity. And then we have Article 14, 15, 16 and 21. And it is on the intervention of our courts that certain acts empowering the women and protecting the rights of the females were enacted. There are large number of judgments starting from Air India, Nargesh Mishra, which benefits the rights of the women, uplifts them. So judiciary is doing whatever is possible within its means. And recently, I may tell you, in the last batch of civil judicial officers, which was recruited in UP, it was a very big batch of candidates, about 608. Brother, if I am not wrong, it is 608, 610. 50% of the candidates who qualified were female. So that 50-50, we are trying to achieve it. UP is such a big state that thinking of 110 persons in a particular year to be recruited is beyond imagination. And out of that, 50 are women. And if we go by statistics also, maybe in Supreme Court or in the High Court we are not able to maintain that ratio. But for maintaining that ratio in these higher level of judiciary, it will take time. See, we have a total of about 98 lakhs of advocates throughout the country. These are the figures available. And only 9 lakhs are women. So the ratio is 10% of the male. And we expect that the officer should be in the ratio of 50-50. That would not be possible at all. Out of 98 lakhs male, if you start selecting judges, so their ratio would always be higher in comparison to 9 lakhs females working as advocates or as judicial officers. Otherwise, in other fields, if we go by the World Bank statistics, 39% of the corporate world in India is headed by women. And out of the whole lot, 98% of the management, higher management in the corporate world in India, again has a woman as one of their persons in the board, in comparison to only 90% world over. These are the figures. So there is no difficulty. We are we are agile to the problem of this kind of disparity, and slowly it will be over. But we have to keep it in mind. We cannot ignore it. We have to constantly work, and with the help of these judgments of the High Court, Supreme Court, probably we are in safe hands. These kind of social evils are taken good care of by our judiciary. So we should not be in any way afraid if we can't achieve this target. With that, I just thank everyone for giving the patient hearing through this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Shri Justice Pankaj Mithal. Indeed, achieving gender equality requires the engagement of women, men, third gender or transgenders, girls, boys. It is everyone's responsibility. It's our responsibility. Now for the vote of thanks, I would like to...
I'd just like to say something.
Yes.
On this gender sensitization, women empowerment, what I feel is that it is not the women who need empowerment. It is the men who need to be empowered to realize that they suffer from a superiority complex. And it is the men who need to do this gender sensitization classes. Thank you.
Good thought, sir. Good thought.
See, actually, women are superior. In all ways, they are superior. See, they are the housemakers, and in addition to housemaking, they are in the outer field also. Yes. And we all owe our existence to these females. We should not discriminate. We should keep it in mind. We should not discriminate.
Okay, then now moving ahead, I would like to call upon Ms. Anu Singh, Officer on Special Duty, Madhya Pradesh State Judicial Academy, for a vote of thanks.
I didn't speak from my paper. I thought I should sum up.
Thank you, Madam. A very warm good afternoon to all. It is certainly my proud and privilege to propose vote of thanks. I express my heartiest gratitude to Honorable Shri Justice Pankaj Mithal, Chief Justice, High Court of Jammu and Kashmir, and Honorable Mrs. B.V. Nagaratna, Judge, High Court of Karnataka, and President Karnataka Judicial Academy for accepting our invitation to chair this session. Thank you, sir and ma'am. We are graced by the presence and blessings of Honorable Srimati Justice Nandita Dubey, Judge, High Court of Madhya Pradesh, Honorable Shri Justice Sandeep Mehta, Judge, Rajasthan High Court, Shri Balraj Singh Chauhan sir, Vice Chancellor, Dharmashastra National Law University, and Ms. Ananya Bandhopadhyay, Director, West Bengal Judicial Academy. We are graced by address of the other August gathering. Existence of both the gender is from Adi Kal, but still in this era, in this so-called modern era, we are discussing this topic is in itself a matter of great concern. My lord and respected sir and madam, your pearl of wisdom during the session has surely opened new vistas and made us revisit our thoughts and led us to think on such a sensitive matter. Finally, I convey my greatest and deepest gratitude to all who by their presence made this session successful. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so very much, all the dignitaries. And so we are taking a break here. Please join us over lunch, and we can get back here for the next session at 2:30 p.m. So please take care of the deadline, the time limit. Thank you so very much for joining us.